So I identify myself as a Afro-Latino, um, specifically from the Dominican Republic. So I'm Dominican. And um, I also identify as a gay man, um, international medical graduate, which interestingly doesn't come up a lot in my what I am. I'm an international medical graduate, and I'm very proud of it. And what else? I'm a psychiatrist. I'm a child psychiatrist. I'm a therapist. I think that's about it. If I remember anything else, I'll let you.
Okay.
I'm Catholic. I grew up Catholic. I have an interesting relationship with Catholicism, but I think of myself as Catholic. I mean, I think I haven't found a different way to uh, explore my faith or a different religion, and so I still think of myself as Catholic. I very much these days I don't practice as much, but every time I go to church, I cry. So that tells me that there's still a connection between me and Christianity or Catholicism.
Okay. Okay.
My father, I should say that I'm a father, very important part of my identity. Um, and I think of myself as not part-time father, but a father. And I'm always in my kids' life, no matter whether they were there and at home with me or not. I didn't know it at the time, but when I was in college, definitely had, I really enjoyed psychology and anything having to do with the mind. And I had no idea that I wanted to be a psychiatrist. Um, but while I was going through med school, I liked everything, but didn't necessarily love anything. I just liked everything, and I could see myself doing all kinds of things. Um, and then a few events happened that were very interesting. As I was finishing college, my um, youngest my youngest brother at the time um, was diagnosed with bipolar disorder at 16. Again, which is extremely rare, but he was fully manic, fully psychotic, and that just stuck in my head. Right, I'm the oldest of the family, so I had to make sure I was involved, very involved in the process, and so that just stuck with me. And then, as I'm about to make a decision of going into residency, and I remember thinking I was either going to be a psychiatrist or a surgeon, but I'll tell you how I got to the psychiatrist part, which was towards the end of medical school, or right after I finished medical school. My mother was diagnosed with bipolar disorder type 1, which made a whole lot of sense to me afterwards. My mother was an amazing mother. I was very lucky to have like a bipolar patient mom who just focused on her kids mostly, but who did all these things, right? Like, which I would always wonder, like, why is she staying up so late, doing all this stuff? And so that happening right as I was about to make a decision was just like basically what made me like just look into this even more. And then the reason I told you, and I share all the time, that I was deciding between surgery and psychiatrist. So I think this is really important, which is that at the time, um, once I was deciding, I thought about the fact that I wanted to have a family, that I wanted to be present for my family, and that being a surgeon was going to limit that.
Uh-huh.
Which is not to say that surgeons can't do that, but it was going to be more limiting. And I decided, nope, that's not what I want. So I'm going into psychiatry. I've never regretted it for a minute. It's the best decision I ever made. So I've always been really involved. My journey began with organized psychiatry. My journey really began when I was what I think is now called a diversity fellow through the APA.
Uh-huh.
So back then we were called minority fellows.
Yeah.
And that fellowship just really, I remember I went to my first meeting, which I think was in San Francisco. And I remember going and I met Jean Marie, is that her name? I can't remember her name, but she's a psychiatrist at Columbia.
Mhm.
And so she told me about the fellowships, and maybe you should look into this. And I remember then I went back to my residency program and became extremely excited about it, applied for the fellowship, got it. And through that, it's been nonstop. So I was really involved with APA through that originally in a few of the components. I would sit in the components and, participate. And then as I think my career progressed and I decided that then I became joined ACAP, like when I was a second year, my residency as a second year resident. And then little by little became more and more involved. And I remember I took a little bit of a pause um, when I finished fellowship and I was working, right? I was working so hard. But then I remember asking someone who was very involved in the ROCAP in the New York Council,
Mhm.
asking her how could I get more involved? And so basically I went to the New York Council, then um, continued working at ACAP, became more involved in committees, then became the president of my ROCAP of the New York Council. And currently, I'm not as involved in APA. Um, I but I always think about potentially joining APA again, but I'm super involved in ACAP.
Mhm.
And it's one of the things in terms of like finding the balance. I feel like one thing that I want to share is to know that, you know, is the fluidity in these things, right? Like I've always felt like, well, you have to be in this all the time at all times. And I have now realized that it's not quite like that, right? Like if you need to take some time for yourself, you take some time for yourself and then you come back and you're always welcome and people always want you to. And so right now I'm a member of the adolescent committee. And I sit in the diversity and council committee as well.
Okay.
Uh, div- diversity and culture.
Right. So you can spend time on two committees, right?
Yes.
And so,
And then I'm also the chair of the co-chair of the Latinx caucus. There are so many. Um, trying to think of what is the thing that probably stands out the most. Um, and I guess the thing that makes being a child psychiatrist for me most memorable is to see people do well and to see that kids actually that you can help them do better and get through life in a way. So there's a patient that I've had. I'm getting chills as I tell you this, right? So he's been my patient for 10 years. Started seeing him when he was 60 years old. And, you know, just to think that how much how troubled his life was at the time and where he is today, and to be able to have witnessed it all has been such a gift. Like I just couldn't tell you how proud that makes me of to be able to help someone in their life, in their trajectory, right? So I think this idea of thinking of people, from a developmentally appropriate way, right, makes a big difference when you think about it in that way, right? So these days, I say to him, this is going to be tough because I will never be able to go to your wedding, but there's nothing I would love to do more than to go to your wedding. That's that's the drawback, right? We can't go to their weddings, but it would it would be so nice.
I've heard about people going to weddings.
Really?
I have.
Hey, don't give me any ideas.
In the day, right? But you have to be invited first.
No, yes.
That's
I
right.
So I think, before certainly migrating into a new country, right? Coming into a new country and just kind of getting the lay of the land. I had a very stable life back at home. I moved to the US when I was 16 years old. I don't know if I mentioned that already. I didn't speak English at the time. And, I went through like the same school for 11 years. Um, I lived in a small town, which felt like, um, you know, I felt like somehow I was middle class where I was. And I don't know how much of that was my mother, right, making sure and doing whatever she could to make sure that we felt And then I came here, and it was a completely different experience, right? As now, um, being pretty much, you know, on the lower SES and just having to figure out where to go to school. I had a lot of aspirations while I was there, thinking, and always thought of myself as this amazing student who will always do so great. And, eventually I think I got back to that. But when I got here, it was quite a shock to know that, yes, you're still, a smart guy, but there's, you need to learn English. You need to learn English as a second language. And in terms of talking about mentorships, and I probably will talk this about looking, I met one person in particular in high school who had an extreme, huge impact on me and what my trajectory was after high school. Um, and that, so getting there first and then going through college and not feeling like I fit in, right? I went to a college where it was, I think at the time, 7% minority. It was a 7% minority, and that included um, folks who were, in the 7-year medical program who identify, from other ethnic groups that were probably more affluent and things like that. So it was, if you really thought about like, African American or Latino students were basically 40 out of 2,000, which was, yeah. So that was challenging navigating all of that. I remember at the time, it's interesting because I think at the time it was helpful to be somewhat ignorant because I didn't react to certain things. I remember a guy saying to me one time at school, "Does your skin taste like chocolate?" Right? It was somewhat of a flirtatious comment, but at the same time, it was like that has something to do with the fact that it was brown. Like it just there were all these racial kind of issues, so all the things that were being going on around me, which at the time I was kind of clueless about, and then later on I kind of realized all these things are happening. Um, I think having gone to medical school in the Dominican Republic actually was probably a lot more comfortable.
Ah,
Truly, I you know, I think when you take loans from here and you go to school somewhere else, the money goes a longer way. I don't know if you've ever heard of this. So, because of that, I probably struggled a little bit less there or didn't really struggle much at all. And then in residency, I had one of the biggest struggles is that I always feel like you had to prove yourself,
uh-huh.
right? With patients, with, with colleagues, right? Always feeling like you always feel like it has a chip on your shoulder. People are looking at you to say the right thing, to do the right thing, or to mess up, right? Like, I remember that there was this one patient when I was in my internal medicine rotation who said to me, I had shared that I have been a teacher for like a year or so. And he goes, well, those who can do teach, right? And so that expression,
The other side.
right?
Yeah.
And so it was really like right there in front of her. I remember that the second year resident who was um, the senior in my team was so angry. I remember him like he got really red. And this guy was not a very nice guy, right? So he wasn't very nice at all. And so having to certainly have dealt with racism, have dealt with feeling like I'm getting passed on because I don't look the right way or because I don't sound the right way, right? Or because I didn't go to the right school. So these are all things that you kind of live day by day. And I just think that knowing yourself and being kind of grounded in yourself and knowing who you are, what you're about, always kind of helps you get through that. And then when you get to, then you get to a point where your confidence is such that those things you're able to defend yourself and stand up for yourself and kind of go on. I've had a mentor in every step of my life.
Uh-huh.
Um, and interestingly, and I find it, and I say this interestingly because to me this is really interesting. A lot of the mentors that I had, most of my mentors were women, and I just that in itself like gives me this makes me feel like, I don't know, such a gratitude towards women, because I feel like so many women just got me through. So this first mentor was, she was a teacher. She was my history teacher, but she took an interest in me. And aside from just teaching me, she, I did things outside of school, high school with her. She helped me found, there's something called the Lions Club.
Okay.
And the Lions Club is like a service, one of those organizations, like the Rotary Club. I don't know if you've heard of those.
Yeah.
And so they have a version for younger people, which is called the Leo Club. And with her, and so I'm telling you about this because you'll see the importance of this. So with her, she found out that I have been involved in in the Leo Club back in my country. And she said, "Oh, I've been wanting to found one, to wanted to start one in our Lions Club." And so I became the founding president of this Leo Club. And so my leadership skills just kind of started from there, because this same woman said to me, "Hey, you've only been in this country for a year. And because you've only taken English as a second language, you're probably only going to be able to go to a city school. And while those are great, I really think you should leave the city." So that, you, she just felt that I would get a better experience and a better education. And so she said, "Why don't you stay an extra semester in school? You're still very young." I was 17. So she said, "Stay an extra semester. You're gonna graduate in January. That's when you turn 18. So you're right on track. But you'll be able." Lo and behold, that's exactly what happened. I did that, and then I ended up going to this, pretty prestigious liberal arts college in upstate New York called Union College, because of her. And I think that, definitely set the tone, because during those 4 years, I was able to like really become, more acculturated with being an American, right? Like in the US, right? My English improved. I mean, because there was very little Spanish that could be spoken, right? There were no people to speak Spanish to, so I spoke mostly English.
Yeah.
And then I've had mentors all throughout, right? Like mentors in college, mentors in residency, medical school, people who have always taken the time, aside from just, being my teachers and my professors, they have taken the time out, outside to find out about me, what I'm doing, help me get jobs. I mean, all these interesting things, right? And so I personally think mentors are super important in one's life and career. My family, absolutely. I mean, I think, and when I say my family, I think in the beginning I could tell you, like I said to you, my mom. My mom is my rock. Right? My mom was our rock. She just make sure from the minute, from always, but when the minute we got to this country, it's like she found a way to always, clear the path for us, so that we know to find a way so we knew, right? So we had this path that had been carved from earlier before we came to this country, but she wanted to make sure that we continue on the path. And so she was the biggest supporter. My family in general, my siblings, supported me in many ways, financially, emotionally. I think also friends, which sometimes, you find yourself like being overtaken by friends and like everything, all the drama, but it's also really helpful to have friends that support you. And I think now, and to me, this is a type of support, right? Like my kids, um, they give me, I I see them, and every day I want to do better because of them. And there's nothing more supportive to me than when my daughter says to me, "Daddy, how was your day?" It just brings a smile to my face.
Mhm.
Um, I was very lucky to be married to the mother of my children for 23 years. She was a huge support in my life. We met in college, and I mean, I think we both supported each other. We both became physicians. And that, you know, again, it's all about family. And I love something very simple. I love sitting on the rug. And it's interesting. I'm typically wearing a suit. I'm really typically dressed up, but I'm with my suit. I get down on the rug with younger kids, and I just love that. But again, I love everything about my job, right? And I can truthfully tell you this. I mean, I love even the days when I'm like, I don't want to work today. Then you get in front of the camera or you go to the office and you're meeting with somebody and it's like it all goes away. Remember like this is something that makes me so excited. And I'm just so it you know almost every aspect of it. I mean, I think dealing with the business aspect is probably not as fun, but it's something that I even have learned to enjoy, right? Um, because I'm in private practice, I pretty much do everything myself, but I've learned to even enjoy that. Um, so I guess everything about it. I love being a therapist. Um, well, I think that no, I was I thought about this because I think I was really determined.
Determination.
I was determined. I was always very determined that, I was gonna, get to where I felt like I needed to get to. And my mother used to always ask me, how come you never seem satisfied with what you were doing? And I think at the times I didn't have the words for her, but I realized that the answer to that was because I hadn't gotten to the place where I felt like I needed to get to, right? And so I was always determined to get there, no matter what obstacles came in the way. And there were a lot more than the ones that I told you, right? Like, you know, but certainly I just always knew like this is where I'm going, doesn't matter what. It was also very humbling to as I finished college, right? So basically up until that point, I'm telling you, finished high school when I was 18, graduated college when I was 22, and graduating from college and not getting into med school, um, irrespective of the fact that I'd only been here in this country for 4 years, it didn't matter. 5 years for me, I didn't get it, right? So that felt like a big blow. Um, and it was so humbling to realize, and this has helped me subsequently, that there isn't just one path, right? There are many paths you can take to get to where you want to get to. Right? And we say this all the time to people, but I think it doesn't become real until it actually happens to you, until you experience it. And so that was really, that for me was um, a great lesson that I learned. And, I wouldn't change anything about my life, anything. Well, let me tell you more the positive side of it. Okay. So I actually, it is just so nice to when people come to me and say to me, you know, it's so glad to come and find somebody who speaks my language. It is just so reassuring. It is so nice to see somebody that looks like me. It is somebody to be working with somebody, and it's so comforting to be working with somebody who understands the country that I come from, or who's even gone to an international medical school, right? So that is certainly, you know, the positive part of being, of being an international medical graduate, being a Afro Latino man, right? Like, but all those things, um, that to me is super rewarding.
Mm-hmm.
One of the more challenging things, so on the opposite side of the coin, is to have people who, in an unbelievable way, people who come to me, right, who have certainly researched me, come to my office and somehow look still shocked of what I look like. And that to me, it's just like unbelievable. But it happens. And I've had people certainly make me feel like I'm less than, I have also had people who have, said to me, I'm really only coming to see you because you trained at the Columbia Cornell program, which to me so elitist, but hey, to each his own. So certainly all those things have been an issue. but I tell you, being a
Mm.
person of color in this field, I wanted to work at Columbia University. So one of my goals, as I was since I can remember, my mother had moved to the neighborhood right around the Columbia Medical Center here in New York City. And I remember coming to visit them, whenever I had breaks, I would come from college and come to my mother's house or to our home, to my home. And I would go to some appointments with either my mother or my grandmother and at the medical center, and no one spoke Spanish and no one looked like us. And I was just like, I just couldn't understand that. I was like, what is this? I mean, everybody in this neighborhood at the time, the neighborhood was mostly Dominican. Everybody in this neighborhood is Dominican, and yet nobody looks like us who works at the medical center. So it was my goal to be there at some point, which is exactly why I ended up doing my child fellowship there and subsequently working there and working in the community, right? So um, I'm saying that because I think that's directly related, right, to me being an international master graduate, me being a Spanish speaking man, right? Like looking the way I do, right? I wanted to use those things. And so for a long time, you know, I, so in terms of my identity, and I knew I would remember other things. I'm a private practitioner who identifies as a community psychiatrist. So I should have said that to you earlier, right? And so again, I think another thing to always, and I always talk to mentees about, is the importance of knowing what you need at the time when you need it. I'm at a point in my life where I still need to be in private practice because the reality is that, financially you do better in private practice. It's a reality. And so I need that right now. But my heart is always in the community. And so I'm always thinking about ways in which I can incorporate more people into my practice that look like me. It excites me till no end to hear that somebody, to just people, when people call me and they right away on the phone tell me, oh, we want to see you because we're looking for a Black doctor. Oh, we want to see you because we're looking for a Latino doctor, because then, because, honestly, I just wish I could have a practice that was just openly that way. Yeah. So when I was I remember I mentioned that before I moved to the US, I'd gone to the same school for my whole life. And my school was a Catholic school that had a very strong like community service. The founder, you may have heard of him. His last name is LaSalle, and he was this French guy who had like a congregation of brothers, and they're one of their the things that they did. One of their, I don't know what you call that, but one of their missions was to work in communities and to serve the poor. And so I um, was very involved in everything in the school. And when I was in 10th grade, I was assigned, maybe 10th or 11th, 10th and 11th, I was assigned to go to a community center that had a medical office. And that was my very first kind of experience for myself. My dad is a physician, but this was my own experience, like experiencing being working with patients. So I used to assist the doctor basically. I used to like be like the receptionist, but also help the doctors like get things. And so that was my first kind of like, oh wow, I want to do this.
Mhm.
Continue to help people in this way. Um, so and I've had other stories like that, but that certainly is the one that stands out the most. Yeah, I mean, I think again, I mean, I can't emphasize enough the importance of. I think one of the things that can happen as we go through our journey is that we may feel intimidated about asking for help. Um, right. So I think it was something that I think is really important is just to know when to ask for help. And this is where mentors come in, right? Nobody minds in my experience. And I have to share it to you about one other mentor who has been very key for me in child psychiatry. I'll tell you in a minute. But, you know, I was thinking about her because of the times when I've emailed her and I got a response right away. Do you want to get on the phone? Always meeting every time we had a chance. We would always meet at the annual meeting through the years, right? And I will always get mentored that way. So I don't know if you know this, but Gate Carlson.
Wow.
So Gate Carlson, I trained for adult psychiatry where Gate Carlson was the chair at the time, the child psychiatry department. And, you know, I can't thank her enough, right? Like she has been such a key component, part of my life. In so many ways, my life as a child psychiatrist has helped me tremendously. So again, I think it's just always important to know that those people, doesn't matter how famous they are. I don't think in child psychiatrists, you don't get much more famous than gay.
Right.
She's always been there.